Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies. Being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our next item is 2.03, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? All those in favor? Motion passes 7-0-0. 2.04, the next item is to establish the agenda order, and the agenda stands as published. Item 2.05, recognitions. Tonight, we would like to recognize the many partnerships between the local arts community and Anne Arundel County Public Schools. And I believe Ms. Lori Snyder is coming to the podium.
Thank you. Good evening, President Korbelak, Vice President Nally, members of the board, and Dr. Olato. I'm Lori Snyder, the Senior Manager of the Performing and Visual Arts Magnet Programs, and I'm pleased to be here to present this evening's recognition. Before I begin, I would like to ask the members to come forward, and Dr. Olato. Former U.S. Secretary of Education Richard W. Riley once said, "The arts are an essential element of education, just like reading, writing, and arithmetic. Music, dance, painting, and theater are all keys that unlock the profound human understanding and accomplishment." In Anne Arundel County Public Schools, we strive to give every student the keys necessary to unlock their full potential through engagement in the arts. Every day, our students further their cognitive and creative skills through countless arts opportunities, including arts-integrated curricula, 4 performing and visual arts magnet programs, high-quality fine arts elective courses, and many challenging art camps and competitions. But we cannot provide these programs on our own. We are here tonight to recognize some of the dedicated community arts partners who dedicate countless hours to each to support and engage our students, our teachers, our families, and all through the arts. While each partner offers unique opportunities, their combined efforts ensures that high-quality arts education remains a priority within our county. Together, they have provided performances and workshops for over 1,500 students each year, guest artists, teaching artists, and artists in residence to engage the students and teachers in pre-K through the 12th classroom. Student summer bridge and summer arts integrated programs, hundreds of hours of professional development for teachers and administrators, global opportunities for teachers and students to learn alongside peers and artists from around the world. We are incredibly thankful for the tireless support provided by each organization and look forward to the many opportunities to still come with our continued partnerships. Our honorees tonight, from Art Walk, Chair and co-founder Chuck Walsh, from the Arts Education in Maryland School Alliance, Alexa Milroy, the Program Development and Director. From Young Audiences of Maryland, Executive Director Stacy Saunders and Education Director Pat Cruz. From the Annapolis Shakespeare Theater, Artistic Director Sally Boyette. From Compass Rose Theater, Founder and Producing Artist Director Lucinda Mary Brown. And from the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County, Executive Director April Nyman, Board President Marnie Kagan, and Board Secretary Esther Parker. As they come forward now, please join me in thanking these individuals and organizations for the support and involvement that these arts programs have provided to our schools and community.
I know Lori Snyder just snuck out the side door, but we also wanted to congratulate her because she won an Annie Award for Arts Educator. Okay, 2.06 is school and community highlights. Do any of my fellow board members have something to share? Mrs. Brandenburg.
I just wanted to say a very, very special thank you to Kat North and Michael Bourne. He is head of the print shop up there. I went online and called the main number for Kat North, and they put me in contact with Michael Bourne, and he designed the banner for our homecoming for these little guys. And we couldn't run through it. We were supposed to, but it was just so great, so fantastic. Sent him over what we wanted. The students designed the banner, and it was printed just hours later, and it was just completely reasonable, easiest process ever, so fantastic, and absolutely made that day that much more special. And I really wanted to just say a very special thank you. I hope he's watching.
Mrs. Ritchie.
On the 10th, myself, Ms. Korbelak, a couple others got a chance to go to the Teacher of the Year, which is the recognition for the entire state. And it's such a overwhelming evening. Whether your teacher is in the finalists or not, it doesn't make any difference, because it's if you've never been to Martin's West, the entire building was packed with people who appreciate and love education, and you could just feel the warmth and know that people really cared about the educators in the room. And it really helps when when crappy things are written about you in the paper all the time. Sometimes it gets a little daunting. And so when you get to go to an event where people really appreciate teachers, and the education system, it's really a great opportunity. And the other piece is, I noticed when I came in, we recognize our employee and volunteer and educator of the month, and we've added an extra person on there. It's an employee spotlight now that's done of employees that are here in central office. So, you think everybody knows everybody because you work here, but you realize that maybe you don't necessarily know everybody. So it's a great way to be able to recognize an employee, just kind of get to know the people that you're working with in a kind of non-informal way there. So I think that's really great that they have that out there, and appreciate that.
Ms. Chaudhry.
I would just like to say thank you to the principals at Edgewater Elementary, Crofton Woods Elementary, and Central Elementary. Last week, South River started its pilot program for the #ReadWithMe program with Anthony Alston's department, the equity department, and the program is to promote reading. And those 3 schools, they were very open. They let South River's National Honor Society go in there. They let the students read, interact. And I just want to say thank you, because they did this on such a short notice, and they did it with so much enthusiasm. So it was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to echo a couple of things the board members have talked about. Last Friday was the Teacher of the Year dinner. It was wonderfully attended. It's a fabulous a way to recognize the good work of the teachers around the state. Our own Christina Haustian from Broadneck High School was our Teacher of the Year, and she is wonderful, and that was a nice recognition of her hard work. Again, this past Wednesday, you've already heard, were the Annie Awards for the Arts Council, and our very own Lori Snyder was the 2014 Arts Educator of the Year. Again, another wonderful community event. On Thursday the 16th, I was joined by several board members at the Cat North Open House. Yet another fabulous year and a great turnout, and a real great opportunity for prospective students and their parents to visit that program and learn all about the different programs that are involved in that school. And then on this past Saturday, I was able to attend and participate in the College and Career Fair held at Annapolis High School, and it is sponsored by Congresswoman Donna Edwards, who we share, Anne Arundel County shares with Prince George's County, and she does an annual, this was her 6th annual College and Career Fair. It was very well attended. The Congresswoman did a fabulous job of introductions and a nice talk with the parents before kicking off the day, and so we're very thankful for our participation with that event. So thank you.
I just want to echo what Mrs. Brandenburg and Dr. Arletto said about Cat North, but I'm going to put in a plug for their pie. We went to the open house, and if you have a chance next year, if you didn't get to go this year, You can get your pumpkin and pecan pie for Thanksgiving and store it in the freezer, and it's made by our culinary students, and it's just fantastic. Our next item is 2.07, the CRASC report.
Good evening, President Korbelek, Dr. Arlotto, and members of the board. My name is Jacob Horskamp. I'm a junior at North County High School and the second vice president of the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils. This has been a productive month in student leadership. The CRASC executive staff has been meeting on a bi-weekly basis at the Carver Center in Crofton. The increase in frequency has allowed more students to become involved as we've been joined by a number of new faces. This is a nice relief to the panic that sets in when we reconvene after a summer off to find that 20% of our seniors have graduated. It's also a relief because we have a lot of work to do this year. This work began at the Fall Leadership Summit on October 16th at Lyndale Middle. Students attend one of two breakout sessions. The first was facilitated by the Maryland Special Olympics and hosted by our treasurer, Scott Howarth. Attendees enjoyed a bocce ball demo and presentation on invigorating our school's participation in the Cool School Challenge. The other workshop revolved around updating the nomination process of the student member on the board. Secondary students from across the system participate in a collaborative discussion of how we will go about updating the process. In an effort to align with the Board of Education protocols, CRASC is soliciting comments from the public. We invite any interested parties to share their opinions of how they feel that CRASC should go about nominating a student for the appointment to the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. Public comments will be allowed at the upcoming meetings on October 29th and November 12th at 6:30 p.m. at the Carver Center. It is our intention to present a fully amended version of our nomination process to the CRASC General Assembly on December 3rd. Thank you for your opportunity to speak on behalf of the students of Anne Arundel County. We look forward to serving for the next year.
I have item 2.08, the PTA report. Don't see anybody. Okay, then we'll move on to public comment. Anyone wishing to speak on an item not on today's agenda may offer testimony during the public comment portion of the meeting. Speakers will be allotted 3 minutes each. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. This time is intended for speakers to voice their opinion and not necessarily as a question and answer period. Speakers may pose questions, but answers will be counted toward the 3-minute allotment. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handout should be given to the board assistant. I have one completed card tonight for Benjamin Taylor.
Good evening. Deep Creek Village is a new construction neighborhood that feeds Broadneck Elementary School, Magothy River Middle School, and Broadneck High School. It is located at Bellarive and Pennington Lane North. The community has 111 lots and is 100% complete. Most families have several school-aged children. Tonight, I'd like to discuss the elementary school students specifically. At this time, the community does not have a bus stop. Over 20 elementary school children must walk out of the 111 home neighborhood, turn right onto a double yellow line road, and walk up the hill to the current bus stop at Quaker Ridge Drive in Bellarive. It's about a half a mile. The current bus stop is located on a blind hill in a 35-mile-per-hour zone where speeds typically are over 45 miles per hour. There is no shelter, and in bad weather, parents park 15 cars illegally along Bellarive Drive to wait for the bus. Having a bus stop at the entrance of Deep Creek Village eliminates all concerns for safety, shelter, and convenience. Number 1, it is closer than the current bus stop for over 80% of the current bus stop users. Approximately 20 children come from Deep Creek Village, and approximately 2 to 4 come from Quaker Ridge. Number 2, there is a beautiful and functional pavilion where children can stand in the rain and snow. It is set back from the main thoroughfare of Bellarive Drive. Number 3, Pennington Lane North and Bellarive is located in the valley on Bellarive, providing maximum visibility and eliminating the concern of a blind hill. Number 4, parents of the 20 to 25 bus stop users will park on Pennington Lane versus Bellarive, eliminating a significant and illegal traffic concern. On October 13, 2014, after 2 years, a petition signed by over 50 families, letters to Ronald Dispenza, the Supervisor of Transportation, signed by parents of 22 children at the bus stop, and numerous documented emails, AACPS finally gave us our bus stop. They then On October 21st, 2014, after stating that they were misinformed, Mr. Dispenza took the bus stop away from Deep Creek Village and moved it back to Quaker Ridge. As evidenced by their actions over the past 2 years and their most recent correspondence to parents, I'd like to highlight 2 major points. The Department of Transportation has a consistent track record of making uninformed, arbitrary decisions, and they are ignorant to critical facts, including how many students ride the bus and from which neighborhoods and/or geographic locations. Number 2, the department shows a consistent disregard for safety and common sense. I'll leave you with this. The department has consistently ignored our offers to visit the bus stop during use to view these concerns for themselves. If they would demonstrate the slightest bit of concern and common sense and ask the bus stop to stop at both locations for a week, they would see that 20 to 25 children come from Deep Creek Village and 2 to 4 come from Quaker Ridge. Maybe 2 stops is the answer, but common sense and safety should prevail. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak during public comment? Or Mr. Webb?
I just had a question. What's the pickup time for those children at that stuff? Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Nally?
I'd like to ask Dr. Arlotto to ask the transportation to look into this, please, because I know that area well, and I know that there is significant traffic. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak during public comment? I don't have any more cards. Okay, please come on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tarsha Beavers, and I just have, I guess, a concern about the Annapolis area redistricting committee meetings and I'm assuming, I guess, the guidelines that was given to the committee. I'm concerned with the current redistricting committee meetings because I've attended some of the meetings, and I've also been in touch with some of the attendees as well as the committee members, and I'm concerned that the consensus seemed to be that the guidelines that was given to them does not allow them to provide a feasible recommendation to the issues at Tyler Heights Elementary School for their current situation, with the only options being for some of the students to either go to Eastport Elementary or Georgetown East Elementary. And as a concerned parent and a lifelong Annapolitan, I'm kind of concerned with the issue of the boundary lines being out of date for one, the East Harbor House elementary school kids who should have been going to Eastport for the past 20 years and how that's been overlooked. And I'm concerned that by this simple solution doesn't make it fair to all the kids in the Annapolis area, because they've been dealing with overcrowding, and kids in certain neighborhoods are being bused across town to what seems to be schools that are not within a reasonable distance to kind of what some attendees kind of feel is kind of a if you will, and no means disrespect, kind of modern segregation kind of feel. So I'm concerned about those meetings, and if because I feel that if the committee members don't honestly feel that they've been given, a fair opportunity to make a proper recommendation, that a proper recommendation won't be made, because attending those meetings and listening to kind of the respectful arguments and back and forth, and kind of them saying that it's not our fault if we could open this up to redistrict the whole area, but those are not the guidelines. So my concern is that who knows when we'll be able to redistrict in the future, and if we don't know when the Annapolis area school is going to be redistricted, why are we only dealing with the few schools instead of opening it up so that holistically Annapolis children can just have the best access to education? Thank you.
Could you fill out a card before you leave? Michelle's got one for you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Webb?
Just curious, are those redistricting meetings open to the public? So board members can attend, just to get a feel for how those things go on? Would somebody please send me a schedule of the meetings and times? Thank you.
Yes. Okay, we'll now move on to our action items. Item 4.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Olato, your recommendation, please.
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the personnel listed on the attached sheet be promoted and or appointed.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. The next item is 4.02, policy revision, third reading, teaching about religion, policy code IFIA. Dr. Olato, your recommendation, please.
I recommend the approval of policy IFI, subject to final correction for style and format.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor? Motion passes 800. Our next items are review items. 5.01, the construction status report. Are there any board questions or comments? Are there any public comments? Okay. You barely got here.
You're welcome.
Item 5.02 is a review item, the monthly financial status report. Were there any board questions or comments on this one? Any public comment? Okay. Item 5.03 is also a review item, the fiscal year 2014 operating budget closeout, and we have a staff presentation.
Good evening, Alex Shaknovich, Chief Operating Officer here to present review item 5.03, which is the fiscal year 2014 operating budget closeout. I simply want to provide you an orientation to the exhibit that's been attached to your material for this evening. And you'll see on the first page, the exhibit is divided up into the four major categories of our fund balance. The general funds is a combination of both restricted and unrestricted general and grant resourced operating budgets. The second column shows the food service internal service fund for the Food and Nutrition Services Division. The third column is the capital project fund. And fourth is the non-governmental, non-major governmental funds, which essentially is our camps and gate receipts. You'll see that our fund balance in terms of general funds decreased from, in total, $57.8 million in 13 down to $49.4 million in 14. The rest of the details are as presented on that page. The next sheet over shows the unrestricted general funds. So unrestricted being non-grant based in nature. And you'll see that between FY12 and FY13, our fund balance had increased $2.6 million, bottom line, from all sources. Between 13 and 14, our fund balance decreased by $7.7 million, down to $22.08 million in 14. And we suspect that when we complete the current year, the FY15 year, that bottom line will be on the order of approximately $12.5 million. You would have seen from the prior page that we had about a $2.2 million left over in the prior fiscal year, and during the course of the year, we would expect to accumulate on average about $10 million of unexpended resources, getting us to that $12.5 million. At $12.5 million, remember, is juxtaposed against the $20 million that we're using in our current fiscal year budget as a revenue source. So as we head into next fiscal year in terms of revenue, we will have to mark down. We will have to go from a $20 million self-generated revenue source downwards to a $12.5 million or a net $7.5 million reduction in revenue. And finally, on the last page, you'll see our proprietary fund, the internal service fund, and this is as it relates to healthcare. And you'll see that our healthcare fund balance has fluctuated depending on our claims and expenses from year to year. But where we are in the final year, so I'll just walk you through 14 versus 15. And if the board is to pay attention to the board contribution line, so on the final page under revenue, you'll see board contribution. Our actual board contribution in the FY14 was $131.1 million. In the budget for FY15, you'll see that number has decreased to $114.3 million. That gap, that reduction between the 14 and 15 budget equates to the $16.7 million that during the budget adoption process with the local county government that was utilized to pay for the step increase for the opening of the contract school, et cetera. So you'll see that reduction there between the 131.1 down to the 114. So we're anticipating that at the end of the current year, our fund balance will drop commensurately, and we will likely be heading into next year with about an $8 million fund balance. Now that sounds like a lot, but you'll see that historically we've had anywhere from 1.44 up to 3 months of claims paying ability. $8 million would provide us only 2/3 of a month of claims paying ability in heading into FY17. And so what we're going to need to do is we will need to work through the budgetary process and with our county government to be able to restore the health, the stability of that internal service fund so we can continue to pay our claims on a going forward basis, because the monies that were removed, as the board recalls, were one-time money. So once they're removed, they're removed. They're not automatically replenished absent some other intervention. So absent either another strategic attempted cost reduction, i.e. plan redesign, or a reinfusion of dollars into the health fund. And that concludes the presentation. We're open for any questions you might have.
Mr. Webb.
Mr. Shaknovich, I noticed that we're going to be having an audit performed on the health plan on the claims administrator.
Yes,
the prospective auditor, have they given you any indication of what they typically find in the way of error ratios when they do these kinds of audits?
Well, we completed our dependent eligibility audit, and on the dependent eligibility audit, we typically do aggregate some cost savings by finding ineligible dependents, et cetera. On the claims audit, there is not the expectation of finding robust findings. In fact, honestly, I would be nothing more than pleased if they actually found nothing. Because if they do not, unlike the dependent audit, where we had hoped and expected to be able to harvest out some ineligible beneficiaries, the hope is that between our staff and our consultant and our insurers, that the bills that are being generated by the provider are true and accurate, that they're being accurately deducted for our reductions, and that they're being paid appropriately. So my honest hope is that we find that everything that we hope and try every day to go correct is correct.
Okay, so I assume they'll be checking for coordination of benefits and things like that for this audit?
Absolutely. You'll be checking for the typical things, the coordination of benefits, the correct reductions, that there are not duplicate billings going on, that the discounts are being passed through, et cetera. So there is a fairly robust scope of work, and they will be undertaking a statistically significant sampling of the different types of claims that we absorb to verify that that process is being transacted correctly from beginning to end.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Birch.
Thank you, Ms. Korbelak. I just want to make sure that I understand correctly and that everyone else does as well. So this coming year, we're going to need to have money put back into our health services fund because we're operating at we will be operating at an amount that's too low to be comfortable. Is that correct?
Right. Our cushion is going to diminish to the point that that we're going to be challenged if we have any extraordinary medical bills or unordinary month-to-month fluctuations, because we're self-insured. I mean,
Right.
we're paying claims. Now, of course, deductions are coming in, reimbursements are coming in, et cetera. But just like in the food services arena, where we're buying food in advance and selling it later, in the health services arena, same thing. We need to have enough of a shock absorber to be able to take in those claim to claim or week to week or month to month variances. So you always do, to be fiduciarily responsible, you need to have, again, a health fund balance that A, can cover inordinate expenses, i.e. atypical medical expenditures, really high priced, very rare but expensive events, and then the normal fluctuations in billing cycles.
Okay, because the money from that fund was used, I think you said, to fund both the Monarch Global Contract School as well as to fund the very modest pay raises that our teachers and our staff received this past year.
It was used to fund the increase between what would have been a 2% COLA compensation placeholder to what became a step increase for the Unit 1 employees. So that gap was covered by these one-time monies.
Okay, so not only then do we need the money back in the health services fund, but since we don't have the health fund as a funding source anymore, because that was just a one-time thing, we're going to need from the county the increase in health services fund and money to fund the ongoing pay raise, not a new pay raise, but to continue to fund the pay raise that we gave last year.
That's correct. That's one of the dangers, and that was discussed both here at the board and as well as before the county council, that there's an inherent danger in using one-time monies to pay ongoing expenses. Typically use one-time monies for one-time expenses,
Right.
and then there's no carry-on or tail expenses with that. But a salary increase, for example, is not a one-time. A bonus would have been one-time, but a permitized salary increase is an ongoing expense. And so, to your point, using one-time monies to cover an ongoing expenses is not typically the desired budgetary strategy.
And is there any possible way that maintenance of effort would cover that next year?
At the present time, we believe we're probably looking at a negative or an upside down starting point budgetarily as we head into the 16 fiscal year.
So the increase in funds that we receive from maintenance of effort, which is what we receive from our increased number of students, would not cover the costs that we would incur because of these ongoing programs.
Well, remember that maintenance of effort is a flat funding, which is a 0%.
But based on the number of students that you have.
Correct, but if you simplify it to its lowest common understandable denominator, maintenance of effort is a 0% COLA.
Right.
The negotiated agreement gave employees anywhere from approximately a 2 to 3% increase. So you had a 2 to 3% cost increase, but a 0% essentially revenue increase. So that creates a structural imbalance that then propagates through the rest of the fiscal years unless it's recaptured in some manner.
So when the county kept moving funds, instead of giving us actual dollars, moving funds from our own money, they sort of put us in an impossible situation.
It's a more challenging situation, and essentially what that creates is a need to have some fairly robust discussions during the development and funding cycle for our 16 and 17 budgets.
Because we're not going to be able to continue funding everything if we have a flat budget.
Right. Essentially, a structural imbalance is if our costs continue to increase, but our revenues stay flat or negative, then that gap will continue to increase, ergo a structuralized deficit that will be very difficult to overcome mathematically.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, ma'am. Of our 13 state categories, did we come in under budget for each of those?
Other than maintenance of plant. Maintenance of plant is the one category because we had if you remember in the last year, we had the common, and I'm not talking this past summer, the summer before, we had one of the hottest summers that we have had on record, and it was followed by this past winter. I can tell you my own personal experiences. I've lived in my house since 1997. I have never once since 97 had a heating bill as high as I did this past February. So operations of plant, because of utility costs between the abnormally warm summer, and I'm talking summer of 13, and the winter of 14, combined because of these utility costs to push us over in that one category. But in net, we were solidly above in every other category.
Okay, and so do you remember how much under relative to pupil transportation we were, by chance? That's based off of fuel and all the other things that go on, right?
I don't remember the exact number, but what I do remember is during the budgetary process, $1 million was moved out of the transportation category into some of the other categories, including salaries and other instructional costs, which would be for charter schools and all. So I don't recall specifically, Mr. Jackson, how much exactly we had left over, but I know that we started out this year $1 million less than we started out last year because of that budget transfer as part of the county council adoption process.
If it's possible, could we maybe have the closeout numbers based off of this broken into the 13
You're actually going to receive the whole book. We just finished up. It's in printing right now, so the entire board, the state, et cetera, will all receive what we call our CAFR, but it's our certified end-of-year financial statements that is prepared in accordance with the government.
So it'll show the
accounting
13.
process. Every single board member will get that. It'll be available to the public, et cetera, once the binding and printing is done.
Okay, thank you very, very
We'll
much. I
have
appreciate it.
far more detail than you just asked me.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this? Okay, thank you. Our last items are consent items, items 6.01 to 6.08. Do I have a motion to bundle these items and move them from information to action? So moved. All those in favor? We now have an action item. Dr. Arlotto, your recommendation?
Yes, ma'am. I recommend that the Board of Education award contracts listed on this evening's agenda 6.01 through 6.08 inclusive.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any public comment? There's a motion on the floor that's been properly made and seconded. All those in favor? Motion passes 8-0-0. I just have a couple of announcements before we adjourn. The next Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, November 5th at 10 a.m. The next Board Policy Committee meeting is Wednesday, November 12th at 8:30 a.m. in Conference Room 2A. And the next Board Budget Committee meeting is Tuesday, November 11th at 5 p.m. also in Conference Room 2A. And that adjourns our meeting.